Thank you all for being here. My name is Dara Berger, and I am your host of the Every Choice Counts podcast. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the author of the book, How to Prevent Autism, documentary filmmaker, and certified health coach, as well as the mother of 2 beautiful children, one of whom has autism. And now I am very excited to introduce our guest, Karen Ranzi. She is an award-winning author, internationally acclaimed speaker, plant-based holistic health coach, certified raw food chef, speech and language therapist for 43 years, and owner of superhealthychildren.com and feelfabulouswithfood.com, her 100-hour online plant-based coaching certification course. She is mother to 2 adults raised on healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet. Karen is a winner of the Bronze Medal Living Now Award in the category of health and nutrition for her book, Creating Healthy Children. And I am very pleased to have her on today's show. So Karen, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm very excited to dive into these topics that we have.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.
Great. So we're all like on pins and needles with this back to school with COVID, okay? Because there are people who are going back to school. There are people who are choosing online, or they're being forced to do online only. My daughter's old school would only do online. We have moved. We're somewhere else outside New York City, thankfully. She's starting in a new school district. They are in person. They give the option. So, and then there's plenty of people who are doing a homeschool co-op, because they don't want to deal with the whole COVID guidelines, or they've always done homeschool too as well. So we'll dive in deep to all of that. The only thing I want to mention is there are a lot of guidelines, and for my own daughter, I won't mention her school for privacy, and I won't, talk about where we are, but it is very scary. It's just like those pictures that you see online. Desks are 6 feet apart. We got plexi on 3 sides and a mask, temperature taking, all kinds of insanity. And so we got to really talk about how to keep children safe emotionally, physically, every which way possible, spiritually, because they're being attacked on so many different fronts right now by what's going on with this lockdown. And I'm dying to dive in deep and ask you. But first, I just want to tell you a quick story that I told my engineer. I went for a tour at my daughter's new school this morning, and we never got in the door. And the reason we never got in the door is because they have a temperature taking scanner. And I want all my viewers to know, if you thought it was just the infrared light gun pointed at your child's head, that was upsetting enough because we were worried about the pineal gland. You and I could get into that. But no, there's an airport scanner in the front door. And you stand in front of it. It's a screen the size of a mini iPad. And I don't know what else it does besides take your temperature. A friend of mine thinks it takes more, like the picture of your face and whatever else information. And I refused to do it. I didn't know the safety of it. How much radiation? Is it the amount of a dental x-ray? Is it a chest x-ray? I don't know. I wouldn't do it. He would not allow me to use my ear thermometer that I keep in my car for just these occasions. And so it was a whole thing. And now we're going to have to see what happens, because I refuse to send her to school and be scanned by this machine that we don't know the long-term safety effects on her growing little brain. So with that said, let's talk about COVID, and tell me what some of your concerns are for children, because that's who you and I are here representing today.
Yeah, I have those same concerns about the radiation, about what kids are going to be exposed to in school, and also just not being able to be really social with their peers, going in and really having a very controlled environment. It's not going to be like school was before. I work in a school for autism in New Jersey, And, the same thing, I have a lot of these concerns. Also, in addition to like what you said with the scanner, my concern is also an increased number of chemicals being used in their everyday environment. I know that there are chemicals used on a daily basis anyway in schools, but I think it's being increased. And, hand washing all day is encouraged. But, here are we talking about all of these microbial soaps, antimicrobial soaps that can be carcinogenic. There's a lot of really toxic chemicals in those soaps. So are our children going to be washing all day with these toxic chemicals? This is really just some of the concerns that I have. There's way many more, but it's really, I understand parents who do not want to send their kids to school because of their concerns.
So let's break down, and I wanted to add to your hand washing are the hand sanitizers that the stores are in, and they ask you to use it. And I'm like, no, I don't use hand sanitizer. Articles have come out that the government has or allowed chemicals that have been banned to go back into hand sanitizers very recently during COVID. And these things are linked to cancer. There are studies on PubMed. This is not, witchcraft or conspiracy theory. So let's break down the concerns that parents have, and then we'll try to offer suggestions so at least parents can be armed with alternatives and things that they can do preventatively or to detox things that are done to their child. So we've got the physical concerns, which is the hand washing you just mentioned, the hand sanitizer, the masks. Most people don't know masks are not safe. You are reuptaking what your body is expelling, which you're never supposed to do. We don't do it with pee and poop. I don't know why we're doing it with our breath.
And certainly breathing your own CO2 in all day long. I know people who are working all day with masks, and they're telling me that at the end of the day, they are nauseous, that they have headaches, that they have overall malaise. This is not good in the long term. We think of, young children, developing bodies, developing brains, breathing this in all day long. We don't know the long-term studies of what can happen when we expose young bodies to all of these different new protocols. And so it's something to really deeply question, and also for how long is this going to go on for?
Exactly. And I'll add to your masks, which is people are getting staph infections on their face, which is extremely dangerous. They're getting lung infections they're seeing. So I guess if I was to offer a solution to the mask wearing, one thing I would say is for at least parents to send in several clean masks so they could at least change them periodically throughout the day. And I've told my daughter, because she has opted to want to try school, and if I can get through the scanner temperature thing, I will allow her, as long as they let me take her temperature some other way. I told her she's got to raise her hand and say, I need to go outside. I need a break.
I was just going to say that as much as possible, they need to get outdoors. Also, days that are sunny, talking to the teacher and seeing, are they taking the kids outdoors? Are the kids going to have time where they can be in the sun and breathe some clean air? Are they going to be indoors most of the day? I think that many people are in fear mode still all these months with COVID, and some teachers may opt to stay inside. So that would not be a good choice. We want our kids to get outdoors and also get sunshine. We should not be afraid of the sun. The sun is good for us. So, these are some of the things that I'm going to recommend when I go back to the school.
So let's talk about things that parents can do to empower themselves to try to counteract some of the measures. Because one thing I think that's the worst thing here, I know for my daughter, is the stress. And we know stress leads to inflammation, and we'll talk about all of that when we go into the podcast on your book. But stress is a killer. We know that. It leads to illness. So you wrap up toxic chemicals, stress, these temperature scanners, you just put it all together, the mask wearing with less oxygen, and it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, I couldn't come up with a better way to get people sick.
Yes. It's not a good situation. I think everybody is aware of it. I know that the supervisor at the school where I'm going back to, that she's made it clear that the most important thing is that the kids be safe. But really, what is that? Is that safety net, meaning that we are, going to throw all of these chemical protocols at them and being in an indoor environment and with less social contact, and wearing these masks? And in my school, it's shields over the masks. So there's, in some schools, even in certain environments, putting clothing over your clothing, you're really going to be covered all day long. And so, really, how healthy is this, not only for your body, but also for what you're talking about here, for your mind? And that's really going to be an issue, I think, is the social emotional piece. And parents are going to have to be more present for their kids. And at a time when, parents are both working at home, and many parents have had their kids at home at the same time while they have a full-time job, even if their kids are going back, and most kids are not going back full-time. I know that in the school where I am, we're going back, the staff is going back full-time, but the students are going back maybe 2 or 3 days and still remote the other days. So parents really need to be present for their children. And I recommend, giving them your full attention when they are talking to you. I mean, this sounds like something so simple, but when we're under stress and we're dealing with all of these different teachers and different protocols that we are unsure of, we really need to be exploring first ourselves, what's safe, what we don't feel is safe, and how to address that with educators, and also how to speak up with our children, making eye contact, getting on their level, telling them that we really need for them to come home to us and tell us what's happening, so we can be really clear on their daily situation, so that there can be a lot of open communication.
I totally agree with you. Now, before we launch into what we can do as far as like nutrition and all of that, I totally agree with you. The scariest thing is the emotional component. We've all seen the videos on Facebook of children who are already in school coming home hysterically crying that they're being made afraid of people, of things. They can't touch each other. They can't see the expression. And what's amazing is you're a speech pathologist for Ever in a Day, which is the most amazing thing because you've seen it all over the years. You've seen no autism to autism everywhere. And we're going to talk about that with your book. But as a speech pathologist, tell us, like, how much is this going to be hurting children with special needs, where they rely on nonverbal behavior, and everybody's in a mask, and they're in a mask, and they have difficulty communicating as it is. So tell me all about that.
Well, when you think about the therapies, right now I am remote, but we're supposed to go back in October. And I'm just wondering how I am going to be doing speech therapy with the mask. I know that they're going to have some plexiglass. So, I'm wondering already how the different therapists are going to be interacting with their kids. So that's one question there. And then also the other thing that I'm wondering is, are kids really going to want to keep those masks on? And is there going to be some kind of a measure? It's all very up in the air, and I think many of these schools that do start in around October, I don't know what's going to happen and if we're going to actually end up staying in school for that long. We'll see really what happens with this situation.
All right, so let's talk about some solutions now that we've talked about the problem and everybody knows what the problem is. So you and I have talked before about, how healing, the same thing that you do for prevention, many times is the same thing you do to heal. So let's talk about, what do you think are the most important ways that people are going to be able to keep their children safe and sane? Because that's the most important thing.
So this is the part that I am really passionate about, because in addition to being a speech pathologist for 43 years, I have also been a plant-based health coach for 20 years. And I know how important it is for kids to eat healthy. And if they are eating processed food in the morning before they go to school, and what I'm saying by processed food is lots of packaged cereals and things that don't have nutrition. And they go to school and they haven't had any nutrients in their body. They're not going to have energy to put up with the stresses and all of these new protocols that they're going to have to deal with. And so that's really a concern right there. I know that when I work with children who are eating chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese and pizza all day, and then I do speech therapy with them, they are numb in the afternoon. They can't think properly because they don't have any nutrition. There's no nutrients in those foods that help for focus and attention and cognition. So, these are some of the things that I think about. And, for children whose parents can pack their food, I recommend packing fruit and packing whatever veggies your child likes. And if your child is not eating an abundance of fruits and vegetables, I would start by getting them preparing some really simple things with you in the kitchen, getting them up at the counter with you, because I found that the quickest way to get kids involved is to actually have them preparing with you. And they're more likely to eat it if they are helping with the preparation. So if they are doing this with you beforehand, even just chopping, even just let's say that you're making a fruit bowl and you involve your kids in chopping the fruit and see which fruits your kids like best. Then you'll know which ones to pack for them for lunch to go to school. There's some great stainless steel containers that are out now that are really popular. I don't recommend those, the typical plastics that people use for lunch boxes, because I've been doing a lot of research on the effects of plastics, and there's benzene and dioxins in the plastic that go into the food, especially plastic water bottles. Give your kids, if you don't want glass, I understand it's breakable, but, stainless steel. There's also some glass bottles that have protection, like rubber around them, that are lightweight plastic glass. So stainless steel or like lightweight glass is good for having your kids bring them to school. And pack fruits and veggies that your kids like. Some other things that they might like is sprouts. I was so surprised that I started growing some sprouts in my kitchen, and they're so simple to grow. You could do it as a little project with your kids. And sprouts give protein, quality plant protein, and they're just life force energy. So they're going to provide protection for your kids. So these are the kinds of things I recommend to get into your kids' diets. No matter what they're eating, get those foods in. Just add them in and see which ones your kids like. So when I'm talking about sprouts, I'm talking about mung bean sprouts, broccoli sprouts, sunflower greens. So sometimes they're called microgreens. And those are excellent if you do not want to prepare them yourselves. There's many stores, health food stores, that now are selling those. Just make sure you check the expiration date, because they go bad quickly if they've gone past that expiration date. And so my kids loved to eat sprouts. And whenever they were outside of the home, I would pack fruit, I would pack leafy greens. So, for instance, if I was making tacos for them, and you could do these either cooked or raw. Kids love things like tacos. So you could cook beans, and you could have some salsa and prepare them in separate containers, put them in little stainless steel or small glass containers that have like rubber tops. And you could you could make the beans, saute some onions and the beans, and you could even put in some veggies like chopped red pepper and leafy green vegetables if your kids will eat them. I like to throw in like little diced pieces of kale and mix that in with the beans, and then the salsa, either, a whole, a nice store-bought one, but many of the store-bought ones, you have to look at the jar to see the ingredients. You want to make sure there's not like all this added oil, and that they're pretty much whole food ingredients with not any scientific labeling in them with a lot of preservatives. Right. So you could pack those little containers with the beans and the salsa and some whole grain wraps, not white flour, but whole grain. All right. The white flour products are going to bring our kids' health down. This is the time to really bulk up on whole foods.
Right, because otherwise what happens is their blood sugar gets off. That's what these processed snacks do. And then they're hungry all the time, and then they're irritable and get anxiety. People don't understand that what they need is whole foods, as you said, and and fat, so they're not hungry. And fat feeds their beautiful brains.
Yes. The beans are going to give them complex carbohydrates that are also very satiating, or they could make something like what I have always done for my kids was I make a walnut taco filling where I blend walnuts and sun-dried tomatoes and a little bit of cilantro and a little cumin and paprika. It's so delicious. And my kids will spread that even on like a romaine lettuce leaf.
That's great. One thing I always tell parents too is sometimes you can't go like from 0 to 60, just get the processed food out and get all this beautiful, vegetables in, which I call always crowding out, which is good. You put in more good stuff and it automatically crowds out. But sometimes what parents might need to do for a week or two is cook their favorite foods, but cook them at home so they're whole foods. And then you get them in the kitchen, they get used to it, and then you start introducing, like you said, slowly all these wonderful whole food vegetables that are so nutritionally healing. And so another thing I want to talk to you about, so feeding them a whole foods diet that, of course, is organic and non-GMO is very important. But let's talk a little bit about supplements that would be very calming. Like, for instance, I'll tell you with my daughter, I always make sure to get that probiotic in. If nothing else fails in a day, and she wears a B vitamin patch, which we know the B vitamins are great for detoxification, especially with all these chemicals everywhere. But I also try to get like magnesium, potassium, which someone could do with a simple mineral supplement. And then I do sometimes like L-theanine or lithium orotate, just these calming things if she seems really stressed and is complaining of anxiety. So maybe you tell me some of your favorite go-to supplements that are either calming or ones that will build the immune system to help them not get sick.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Dara. So zinc, again,
yes.
I know you mentioned zinc. Of course, like right now, a lot of people are already taking zinc. That's a good one. There are foods that also contain zinc. One of the big ones is pumpkin seeds. Mm-hmm. Those are really nutritious, high in protein also. So, you get great zinc from pumpkin seeds. I would also recommend selenium.
Yes.
Brazil nuts, like even just one Brazil nut every couple of days can be really beneficial.
Yes.
For selenium. Vitamin C.
Oh, yes.
Really important right now, vitamin C. So eating citrus fruit for the vitamin C, red peppers. And if you want even more vitamin C from food instead of supplementing, because I always recommend getting as much as possible directly from food. There's also camu powder. Mm-hmm. Which is a Peruvian berry. So the camu berry is where the powder comes from. And that's easy to get online. Also amla. Amla is a vitamin C food that comes from India. And so that's also loaded, just loaded. Those two are huge resources for vitamin C. So I do highly recommend those. Let's see. Sometimes also another good one is barley grass powder. Yeah. So taking some kind of a green powder. If your kids do like smoothies, you can add something like a green powder or barley grass powder. That will just give a lot of added nutrition during the day. So those are really, I always go with food first.
Yes.
And of course, like right now, we might need a little extra zinc. So supplementing with zinc is a good thing. And certainly those vitamin C's, those different areas for vitamin C's, those are the main ones. And then, just like what you said, preparing some of these, maybe if your kids aren't eating so healthy and they're eating more in the way of processed foods, start with something that might be a little bit more familiar, like what I was saying, like with the tacos.
Yes.
They're familiar with that. As we get into the cooler weather, making some nice whole food soups, where you can get in beans and vegetables, because we want to get a lot of vegetables in. Vegetables have so much nutrition.
And so spices too. I always try to do spices because a lot of the spices is what they make these herbal supplements out of, And that's one thing I do. I like to rotate like olive leaf extract for a couple weeks. Then I'll do elderberry. I always like kind of like an antiviral, antimicrobial in. But I try to use spices like sage, ginger, which really boost the immune system. And if you just get them in here and there, you barely, it makes food taste better, first of all. Sage on chicken or in a soup. So, but all of those tend to be very anti-inflammatory. So I always tell people to get those spices in.
Yes. And herbs as well.
Yeah.
Herbs are excellent, and you only need a small amount to give you a boost. For example, I love dill. And recently there was some research done on dill, and it was called a natural antibiotic, which I thought was amazing. So dill is wonderful. It's very protective. I found with my kids growing up that they each liked different herbs. Like I could get my son to eat a lot of vegetables if I made him a Middle Eastern tabbouleh. Okay. And I would put parsley in that. And with my daughter, she loved dill. And so I would make a cucumber dill dressing that she loved to have. She would eat a salad if I made her that cucumber dill dressing. So it's really also about finding out more about your kids' tastes and bringing in these healthy foods that they enjoy and getting some really good, simple recipes. And I also recommend getting a lot of raw living food in. And that's why I'm talking about fruits and vegetables. We can cook everything, but it's even better to have as much as possible uncooked and fresh.
And one of the things I want to mention to parents that I think your idea of getting the children into the kitchen is great. And that was my second tier of how I got healthy food in them. But parents shouldn't feel bad. If you have to use bribery, it's okay. If you have to say, you're not going to have dessert until you take, because I put medicine in applesauce. I put a lot of supplements and they don't taste so good, some of them. But I always used to have to say when they were very young, you're not going to get whatever X is that they wanted. Maybe it was watermelon, maybe it was a cookie. You're not going to get it until you take your medicine or you eat your vegetables. So it's okay. Whatever you have to do to get them accustomed to it. Once they're accustomed to it, like you said, they start to enjoy the cooking and the making and eating. They're proud of themselves. But in the beginning, expect that it could be frustrating. Do whatever you have to make it least frustrating for you and your child, because all you want to do is to get from point A to point B, which is them eating healthier. And don't stress about it, because you don't want to stress them about it. You want it to be a positive, wonderful experience. And in the beginning, I will admit to using bribery. And it worked. It worked. That's what worked,
Yeah, I used it plenty with my kids growing up. I mean, my kids are 32 and 30 now, and they take pretty good care of themselves. So I think that, we as parents have to be really good health models for our kids. Like we can't really be, eating Twinkies and just eating potato chips and French fries around them. We have to be a model of eating healthy foods. So that's what our kids are going to look at. They're going to look at those models. And also I wanted to say that one thing that I was able to do was to create different ways of having my kids eat the foods I wanted to eat by making something that would make it possible. So, for example, dips.
Yeah.
I made some really tasty dips that would help them to want to eat vegetables. Because it was really important for me that they eat things like celery and cucumber and red pepper and just, all the vegetables. And they, young children a lot of times don't want to eat those. So, but when I made dips for them, they would eat them. They love to dip their veggies in something. And so I found out certain little tricks along the way that were really helpful for them. Same thing like, Halloween is coming up in October.
Yes.
And traditionally, kids will go out and get, bags of candy. And this year, I think it's going to be really important that kids don't eat that much candy.
Yeah.
Just because of the situation we're in, it could really bring down their health. So I would go and buy them some things that they would enjoy aside from the candy. And they would, of course, have some, but I would limit it. And I would get them things that were different. I would also find out what they would really like a specific book that they enjoy. And I might get them that as a special gift for Halloween. And in the tray, instead of having candy to give out, I would give out organic raisin boxes. I would give out colorful pencils. I would give out little masks and little balls, little basketballs and things like that. Little bead necklaces for the girls. Kids actually loved coming to my house.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love those ideas. I'm glad you shared them. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about another important subject that you and I touched on during our call. So we've talked about, supplements that we can give them. We've talked about how to get them eating a little bit better. But let's talk about the other way to counteract stress. One of them is to talk about their feelings, and so that, talk about how different school is and all of that. But one of the ways to de-stress a child would be to do things that would be relaxing to them. So for instance, for my daughter, it might be taking a walk, playing outside, doing something creative, artistically creative. She enjoys, we go to the beach. We're out by a beach. We go to the beach all the time, every day for like an hour. It could be 40 degrees out and raining. We've got our shoes and socks off because, that grounding, that earthing is really important to release electricity from your body that you come into contact with all day and the Wi-Fi. What are some other ways that parents can relax their children and just kind of counteract that stress that's going on in life?
Well, one of the things I always like to say is that play is the most important thing that kids can do. So making sure that they have the opportunity to play with their siblings, with friends, if they're able to get together with friends right now, because play helps them to become creative and to improve their imagination. These are all wonderful skills for problem solving for when they get older. And especially important right now to have a lot of downtime. And I love what you said, Dara, about taking them outdoors and getting them to the beach. And certainly, as long as it's still warm out, getting their feet, having them barefooted and having them connected to the grass and to the sand at the beach. This gives them what's called negative ions and the water from the ocean, the air. Yeah. This is all what we want to be breathing. This gives health. It's not only what you eat.
Exactly. Or it could be listening to music. Some children enjoy yoga. And you know what? If going on YouTube and watching a video about slime, like my daughter does, if that's going to really relax you for half an hour, well, then go for it. So I think parents need to recognize, make a mental list. What are the things that relax my child? And make sure they do at least one or two of them every day. And time in nature, is just priceless. It's priceless for us.
Also going
fresh air, especially since they're wearing a mask, some of them.
Yes, and those who cannot get to the beach, hiking is fantastic. Being in the woods and hiking and having that time with your child, also really important. And I just wanted to say that there are some parents who are concerned about not going to school, because there are kids who don't want to go to school and parents who have chosen to stay at home. And there are resources. So if a parent is concerned about, what they're going to do at home, some of them are connected with the schools. So I'm sure that your kids are going to be doing remote work at home. But there's even parents who want additional resources, and there are some out there. I know a woman who homeschooled her children, and she is a resource now for other families who are homeschooling. So that's something that I can also give to you, and you can have that link to that if anybody is interested. Okay. But there's a lot of concerns in all directions right now. So,
but I feel like we've at least given parents some ways to, stimulate thought on how to de-stress the kids, things to do to counteract all that's going on. And I think most of all, parents just need to listen to their intuition and follow your instinct. It usually never fails you. Do what you think is right. Protect your child the best you can. And I'm going to make sure at the end of this segment that we list your 2 books, even though the next podcast we're going to be talking about your newest book, so that parents can get ideas with your recipe book. So we'll have that information up. And I thank you so much, Karen, for coming on and talking about back to school with COVID strategies to arm parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dara. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much for watching the Every Choice Counts podcast. And if you'd like to see more episodes, take a look at our website, everychoicecounts.org, or our YouTube channel.